Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Self to Society. My name is Dennis. I'm your host, and today we're going to talk about building the foundation of self-knowing in men. This episode is called RIZZ Him Up because it feels fun, you know? The general idea behind what I'm going to say over the next handful-ish of minutes is I've been thinking a lot about, I care immensely about men's mental health and the seeming massive problem with men taking their own lives. Amidst that, the way that we speak about men in culture. So for maybe the last 10, potentially 15 years, there was a big rise of, I don't want to put labels on some of this stuff, but there's a big rise on feminist culture. And I put that in quotes because it's not just women, it's not just any particular person or party necessarily. There was a big wave of men are toxic and men are shitty and this is how men should behave and men should be soft and men should be sweet and men should be compassionate and men should and men should and men should. And also aligned with men should and men should and men shouldn't. While there are definitely truths to some of those things, I want to point out something super obvious. There are, what the conversation I don't want to get into is about how people choose to identify. So we're going to keep that thing off the table for now. I'm happy to dialogue about that and even do a specific episode on that idea in the framework of what I'm going to talk about. But for now, we're going to take that large group of humans and we're going to just set the content around it to the side. If you were born with a penis, you are biologically different than somebody who's born with a vagina. Our brains work differently, our intentions are different, our instincts are certainly different. How we choose to show up with and interact in the world from a purely neurologically bio level is different. Now, people's behaviors, how they act, how they choose to identify, a lot of that is very fluid in this conversation, which is why I don't want to get into all that. We're just going to talk basics, black and white, which I typically don't do, but it feels necessary for this particular conversation. It is super challenging to be, and I've talked about some of this before, so if you've heard an episode about this, forgive me. If you haven't, welcome. It's super challenging to be a man who has no interest in feeling feminine ever, to have labels like connect with your divine feminine and pair it with your divine masculine and all of the things that people say. There's a million terms. Again, there's a lot of them. I don't have any desire to connect to any, quote, feminine part of myself. That's not a negative statement. It's just not what I think of when I think of being a man. When I think of being a man, I think of needing to provide for and protect for the people that I love and who choose to love me. My friends know that if there's some shit, I'm not a fighter, but if some shit's about to go down, I'm the first one who's stepping in front of that punch. Because when I love you, I will protect you. When it comes to providing, I've been a maniac for a long time. I have run really hard in this life so far, and that's because I feel innate pressures inside of myself. So there's just something different about being a man than being a woman. And when men are being told how to act from the framework of a woman, it's impossible. We will fail 100% of the time. It's like a dog telling a cat how to behave, or a cat telling a dog, or whatever. So in this, I want to be very clear that I personally don't, and I'm going to do a full episode on this, so I'm not going to go into details. I personally don't talk about masculine and feminine energies in those terms. I say them in the way of being competitive or compassionate, because I think that's a more fair way to break it down. That takes gender out of it. It takes how you want to be perceived, how you want to be identified. It takes so many things off the table to just say competitive and compassionate, because at the end of the day, those are the two primary feelings or actions that make sense to me. So Men are built with a particular instinct to be aggressive, to be loud, to be passionate, to fight, to go the extra mile, to do shit that makes zero sense if you're not a man. It makes zero sense, which is why women look at men all the time, especially in our culture, that are surrounded by other women who are telling them that's toxic, that's not good, that's narcissistic, etc., etc., etc. And they're looking at men with this fully negative context. The lens is flawed, and it's cracked, and it's smeared. Smeared? Smeared. Schmear is what goes on a bagel. It's smeared. And it's not fair. It's not fair. Even in terms of therapy, if a therapist is putting a man through a session where they expect the man to behave like a woman, the man is going to fail. And so at least men who are in their 30s and 40s and 50s, I think that this is entirely true. That many of us have tried to learn how to tone it down. We've tried to learn how to not be too much. We've tried to learn how to be less aggressive. We've tried to learn a lot of these things, and it feels unnatural. So, now that the context is out of the way, I feel it necessary to have an encouragement here. The encouragement is this. Regardless of how you identify, what gender you choose to be, if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're any place on the spectrum of sexuality, the men in your life, you have to rizz them up. You have to. Whether you just met them, whether you know them. I mean, just met them is probably not the right thing to say. I mean, unless you're trying to, Then, the men in your life, you have to rizz them up. You've got to come at them with, damn, you are strong, you're powerful, you're capable, you're competent, you're handsome, you are tough as nails, whatever that is. Like, one thing I don't align with, particularly in terms of masculine culture, in quotes, is the idea that men have to be dick-swinging gym rats who prove their worth by making millions of dollars. I don't think that's the metric either. So where I do believe there's a failure on this side where a feminine idea has taken over the identity of masculinity, I also think that there is an over-eccentric push in some men to prove their masculinity, and that's not good either. So I recognize the fault on both extremes, and so the challenge here, the solution, is to see in a man what is the truest about him, to identify that, to be willing to speak about it, and then to say it to him anytime that you feel like it. Again, this could be to your friend, your partner, your kids, your parents. It doesn't matter who, a coworker, this is specifically a willingness to say words to men that are uplifting and encouraging in a way that aligns with who they are. When I, how much of this story do I tell? When I was married, I would ask for certain affirmations. And this has happened in other situations too. And the response I would be given was, I don't want to make your head too big. I don't want to inflate your ego. I don't want to make you feel like you're larger than life. Why? Why not? Aren't I worthy of feeling larger than life? Especially if it's not coming from inflated ego. Or I do believe that there is toxicity in both sides of this, compassion, competitive, masculine, feminine. But if it's not coming from that place, why wouldn't it be okay to make me feel 10 feet tall? Why isn't it okay for you to look at your partner and make him feel like he is 10 feet tall and bulletproof? There's nothing wrong with that. Do men carry ego? 100%. Is it one of the things that keeps us going? Yes. Is it one of the things that allows us to, if we're out with our partner and somebody slaps your ass or touches you inappropriately, that they get fist to their face? Yes. It's part of how we do what we do is because we have a different type of ego inside of us that it's hard to understand if you're not a man. In the same way that Men look at women from the outside, and I know that men have these conversations, we just don't have them publicly because getting canceled seems terrible. But there are conversations that happen about the female ego and how toxic it can be and how unfair it seems, and how when somebody is finding all of their value in being sexy, sometimes it's hard to want to tell them that they're sexy because it feels like it would just inflate that thing that they're finding their identity on, that they're founded in. And this is the same thing for men. Yes, it is necessary for men to be built up, to be admired, to be affirmed. And the ego has to stay in check. But here's the key. It's not your job to keep that ego in check. It is the job of the man to build a foundation in and of himself that has a founded and balanced ego. That's my job. That's the job of every man. Where I think men need to really step the fuck up is in building that foundation. It's not letting us be fulfilled by money or cars or sex or status or a title or whatever. Those pieces of the ego are not always healthy, and they need to be at least examined, if not reimagined, if not destroyed and completely rebuilt. And so building the foundation of balanced and fair ego in a man is the job of a man. It's nobody else's job. Women, if you go into a relationship wanting to change a man or break him down, or you see something in him that you're like, oh, if it just was a little different, just move on to a different dude, please. It's not your job. You won't succeed, and you'll just end up hurting both of you massively in the process. Men, this is a phrase that I don't particularly love, but man the fuck up. Take ownership of the ego that's inside of you. Find tools, find practices, find ways to balance that, and build a strong foundation of what it is that makes you a man in your competition, in your protection, in your providing, that would allow somebody to safely and confidently look at you every day of the week and say, God damn it, you are so strong, you are so handsome, you are so kind, you are such a good protector, you're such a good provider. It's completely necessary. It breaks my heart to know how many men find themselves at the end of their rope. Because it's something that we can fix together. It takes togetherness, and it takes communication. It takes a willingness to not be right or wrong, but it takes more than anything, a willingness to see yourself in the mirror first, check yourself, look at your flaws, find the ways that you can, in and of yourself, start to make these little microscopic adjustments. That's the responsibility for everybody. But that comes with self-knowing. Self-knowing is the key to this. Being able to spend a little time with yourself, being able to get to understand exactly what the fuck you are and being okay with it. Because I promise you that at least a percentage of what you look at on social media that you admire, that you're jealous of, you're not. And could you learn? Maybe. But naturally, and naturally is probably the best word. Naturally, you may not be those things that you want to be. I play basketball. I love playing basketball. I watch basketball highlights, documentaries, shows. I play the game. And I will sit and watch dudes play basketball, and I'm like, fuck. I'm not that. Do I play the game? Yes. Am I decent? Sure. But am I that? No, I'm not. In the same way that I could be looked at for how my brain works, and I've had people say this to me, this is not an arrogant statement at all. I've had people say to me, man, I wish I could think like you. And I've always said, be careful what you wish for, because under every gift is a demon lurking somewhere. You know what I mean? And so I do love my brain. I love how I think. It's philosophical, and it has depth and creativity, and I love those things. But it has its own bag of shit to deal with, I promise. And so when we look at other people and we want what they have, we're failing ourselves immediately. The ability to overcome that is in looking at yourself in the mirror, taking some personality typing systems, taking doing the work, putting in the practice of being still, being honest with yourself, being vulnerable with yourself first. That's another key component to this, is vulnerability is most powerful when it's internal. I believe in vulnerability till the day I die, but I've learned that it is most powerful when it's internal. Men, you have to build your own foundation of balanced and solid ego. Things that have high character, have high integrity. Doesn't mean you're not going to fuck up and do something stupid, because you probably are. And you probably have. And I imagine, this is going to be another episode. And I imagine that shame plays a large role into why you don't want to sit with yourself and work on this foundation. Because so many times what we think about as men is just how we fucked up. And that shame is such a heavy weight on us that it's hard to overcome. It's hard to break free from without some serious intentionality. Dude, sit in the shame for a minute. Find a therapist, talk to a friend, get a journal. Find a way to start to process that shame and rewire it so that it doesn't feel like shame, but it just feels like another experience in your life. And then you can move forward and continue to add layers of bricks to this strong foundation. And then to the people who are in the lives of men, rizz them the fuck up. Flirt with them. Make them feel amazing. Give them, the thing about charisma, and the thing about this idea of rizzing somebody up is that, like, the whole point is to flatter them. The whole point is to make them feel good about themselves. What in the fuck is wrong with that? Nothing. Again, I think the healthiest foundation is a balanced ego. But I will tell you that if you start to look at the men in your life and tell them, damn, I'm so impressed by you. The way that you handled this situation, thank you so much for protecting me at the bar. This happens a lot. Some dude will talk shit, mouth off to a girl. The girl's partner, man, husband, whatever, will turn and say some shit. And then later in the car, the girl's like, why did you have to do that to him? That is the wrong response. The next day, maybe digging in and saying, hey, can you help me understand more about why that's how you behave? That's a fair question the next day. But when y'all get in the car or the Uber going home, look at that dude and say, thank you so much for standing up for me. Thank you. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for giving a fuck about me enough that you would put yourself in harm's way for me. I can't even tell you with real words what that does inside the heart of a man and how far it will take him. Again, this is not just about romantic relationships. It's about your friends as well. It's about your coworkers. It's about the people in your life that you can look at a man and say, you fucking killed it. Everything that you were supposed to do and more. Damn, you look good in that shirt today. Your hair looks great. Don't mind my hair. I'm growing it out, so it's a little old manish today. But looking at somebody and flattering them is not a bad thing. It's not. It's not. And I hope that every single one of you who were willing to listen to this episode find both balance, encouragement, and an open space to find new connection with the men in your life. Because without that connection, we are literally killing ourselves. We're literally killing ourselves because we don't know how to behave like women, and we're being told that that's the only right thing to do. And some of us don't know how to be not aggressive, because that's what we're supposed to do. Again, it has to be balanced ego. I'm with that. But when we feel so lost and so stuck, and we feel like we don't fit into the world where social media is at us all day, and all day long we're hearing these things, it gets heavy. And especially if there's financial trouble, and especially if there's relational trouble, and especially if there's trouble with your kids, or there's trouble with your job. All of this shit weighs up on us so much, and we are self-deprecating motherfuckers to the core. And I promise you, rizzing up the men in your life, being flattering, being willing to say some shit that's just kind and true, could save lives, will save lives. It is a life-saving mechanism if you will commit to doing that in the relationships in your life with men. My voice cracked. If you'll do that in the relationships with men, it will literally save their lives. I believe deeply in this shit. If you're a man who is struggling to figure out their identity, you're struggling to figure out how to build that foundation, please hit me on the DMs, hit me with email, with my phone number. It's super easy to find all of my shit. Just please reach out to me. I have multiple tools and multiple resources that can help you start down that journey. Females, women, humans that aren't men, if you have a man in your life who you feel like is struggling inside, ask him what he needs. And he may not tell you the first time, because if it's been a long relationship and he's tried to ask for these things before and he feels like they were maybe rejected, he'll hesitate to tell you the truth. So it may take some time to create a safe space where that conversation can be had, but please don't give up. Please. I appreciate y'all very much. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, please feel free to ask, because these kinds of conversations don't happen very often. And I do believe it's one of the more necessary conversations that we need to be having. So, to all my females out there, love you. Thank you for sticking by the men in your life. If this is a teaching lesson for you, if you're able to look back on some past relationships and go, fuck, don't hesitate to maybe reach out and say, I'm sorry. It doesn't have to reignite something. It doesn't have to lead into anything else, but that I'm sorry could go a long way. And for the men who are watching, you can do this shit. You are strong, you're capable, you're powerful. What you bring to the table is necessary. What you bring to the world is necessary. And if you need help building that foundation, if you need help tearing some shit down or reimagining it, please reach out to somebody. Myself, a therapist, a friend, anybody. Because you're worthy of having that foundation. And you're worthy of having other people in your life who love you build on that foundation. Until next time, my friends, I love you so much. We'll do this again soon. See ya.